It was about 6 a.m. and I had already had my coffee and what little I wanted for breakfast. I still couldn't eat much because my digestive upset was still with me. So there I was, heading back to my room when one of the crew members asked if I'd like to see the bridge and meet our pilot. The guy didn't have to ask me twice because I'd been wanting to see more of the boat and its machinery since the trip began. We opened the door and all I could see was this hooded figure, kind of sinister looking at first. But it was our professional pilot and the guy responsible for the safe navigation of our vessel. Like Mark Twain, this guy knew every shoal and every bend in the river. He controlled the boat front, back, and sideways with small, delicate controls. Around 7 a.m., we approached the city of Aswan. This and the next two photos are pans from left to right as we approached. All us tourists were divided into two groups. My group would fly out and visit Abu Simbel today and tour Aswan and the dams tomorrow. Naturally, the other group would do it in reverse. Almost as soon as we docked, we rushed out to catch the plane that would take us to Abu Simbel. This picture is of the famous first cataract of the Nile, as seen from the bus window as we crossed on the old Aswan Low Dam. The first cataract is where the Nile goes over rapids and it was no longer navigable. It marked the southern extent of Egypt and the beginning of Nubia. Flying out to Abu Simbel, the ground below was lifeless, even with Lake Nasser to the upper left. Even islands in the lake, surrounded by fresh water, were completely lifeless. You know, I still had intestinal problems, and I nearly didn't make it at the airport on landing at Abu Simbel. But I brought along an extra set of underwear, and by damn, I was going to see the sights no matter what. My first view of the colossal statues of that modest and humble pharaoh, Ramesses II. I'm sure he tried to talk everybody out of it, but they still made his statues carved out of living rock, taller than the famous Colossus at Memnon that I showed you earlier. We all know that he was embarrassed and only agreed to have one little statue made, but to his surprise, they made 4 of him. To make matters worse, this temple was to be dedicated to the sun god Ra, and there he is in the middle above the doorway, but you have to look closely to see him. And by the way, if you will look closely at the statues, they are supposed to be of Ramesses at different periods in his life. The statue at the extreme right is him as a young ruler, and then later on to the left, he's supposed to be looking more toward middle age. Okay, here's that close-up of Ra. Kind of a pitiful little statue for a god whose temple it's supposed to be, wouldn't you think? This and the next 2 pictures are a pan of the temple taken at about knee height. The amazing thing about this and the next temple I will show you is that they were sawed up and taken apart, stone by multi-ton stone, and re-erected here, higher up where the waters of Lake Nasser couldn't reach them. Once taken apart, an artificial mountain was built, and this huge entire temple was built exactly as it had looked in its original setting. This was all done under the direction of the United Nations cultural organizations. The scope and skill of this project is mind-boggling. I believe this little lady, sculpted to the right of one of Ramesses' huge legs, is Princess Merit Ammon. And I believe this small statue is of Queen Matuya, one of the minor wives. And this nice little girl is, I believe, Princess Nefertari. Entering the temple, we encountered a hypostyle hall containing pillars carved as statues of this very modest pharaoh. I couldn't get my camera to go wide enough to capture the statues from head to foot. As a matter of fact, we were forbidden to take pictures inside the temple, and I had to sneak this and all the following when the guards weren't looking. Most of the time I couldn't even use the viewfinder, but had to pretend I was simply holding the camera. Anyways, these are the statues on the south side showing Ramesses wearing the crown of Upper or Southern Egypt. In back of me are statues of him wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. This is the part of the temple I really liked. Here are reliefs inside the hypostyle hall showing Ramesses' glorious victory over the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh about 3,300 years ago. The problem was the Hittites had just defeated the Egyptian army, and all Ramesses did was rally the troops to keep it from being a complete rout and a slaughter. Still, when he got home, he quickly got his spin doctors to make it into the biggest victory ever. This and the next picture is of Ramesses about to single-handedly put the hit on some Hittites and to smite some Syrians. And here's a continuation of the same shot, only showing the god Ra handing Ramesses the sword of victory. Like, thanks Ra, but could you just hold that sword for just a second? I got some more Hittites to bash first. And on another wall, here he is about to smite some more Hittites. And turning the corner, just look, it's Ammon. Yes, the king of the gods, the hidden one himself, handing his very own sword of victory to Ramesses. Man, what a warrior. Due to the restrictions and the lighting, I wasn't able to get any pictures from inside the vestibule. But here's one I copped showing the deepest inside of the inner sanctuary. This shows Ramesses having a power lunch with Ammon, Ptah, and Ra. The temple was so perfectly aligned that only twice a year, on the spring and fall equinoxes, a thin shaft of light would reach from the front of the temple, through the temple, and light up everybody except Ptah, the god of darkness. As I was heading toward the next temple, I looked back to see the temple in its new setting in its artificial mountain. Here I am approaching the temple dedicated to the Lady Hathor. Guess whose huge statue adorns it? Yep, Ramesses. So, if the male figures are of Ramesses, are the female figures of Hathor, since this is her temple? No, the female figures are not Hathor, but Ramesses' principal wife Nefertari, made up to look like Hathor. Please note, this is not the famous Nefertiti, but Nefertari. In her way, she must have been one powerful woman who have been honored this way. Here's a close-up of the artificial mountain above the temple. Inside the temple of Hathor, here's Queen Nefertari offering lotus flowers to the goddess Hathor in her form as a sacred cow. And here's Ramesses offering flowers to Hathor in her human form. Both Isis and Hathor are helping Queen Nefertari get her crown on straight. It sure must have been cool having those beautiful goddesses being so nice to you all the time. Well, we were now out of time, and I was hurrying to catch the bus for the return flight to Aswan. On the way out, I turned around for a parting picture of the temple of my favorite goddess, the Lady Hathor. That evening, we were treated to a Nubian folk music show. The entertainers were good. It seems that every culture has its so-called race or minority problems. In Egypt, the Nubians and the people of Nubian extraction live in their own sections or ghettos and are pretty much looked down upon by the general population. They are also the poorest of the Egyptians. Well, that was it for this day.